The rain fell in sheets that October evening, the kind of downpour that turned the streets of Manhattan into rivers of neon reflections. Marcus Hale stood on the corner of Fifth Avenue, watching the city move around him as if he had become invisible. Just 6 hours ago, he had walked into the boardroom of Hale Industries as its founder and chief executive officer. He walked out as nothing. The vote had been unanimous, 12-0. Even Richard Chen, his oldest friend, and the man he had personally recruited 15 years ago, had raised his hand against him. The words still echoed in his mind: effective immediately, loss of confidence, new direction required. His assistant of 8 years had been instructed to pack his personal belongings. Security escorted him from the building he had designed himself, the one with his grandfather's initials carved into the cornerstone. Marcus started walking, not knowing where he was going, not caring. His phone buzzed incessantly in his pocket. Reporters, investors, his ex-wife probably calling to gloat. He pulled it out and powered it down, shoving it deep into his coat pocket. The rain soaked through his $1,500 suit. His Italian leather shoes splashed through puddles he would have walked around yesterday. Yesterday, when he was still someone. The streets grew less familiar as he walked. The towering glass buildings gave way to older structures, brick and mortar places that remembered a different New York. His legs ached. He realized he had been walking for over an hour. The rain had not let up, and he was shivering now, his teeth chattering despite his best efforts to maintain some dignity. A small light caught his eye, a diner tucked between a laundromat and a shuttered bookstore. The sign read "Rosie's" in faded red letters. Through the foggy window, he could see the warm glow of yellow lights. Without thinking, he pushed through the door. A bell chimed above his head. The place was nearly empty. An old man sat at the counter reading a newspaper. A young couple shared a plate of fries in a corner booth. The smell of coffee and bacon grease hung in the air, so different from the sterile luxury of the restaurants where Marcus usually ate, or used to eat. He slid into a booth near the window, water dripping from his hair onto the worn vinyl seat. He had no idea why he had come in here. He wasn't hungry. He just needed to be somewhere that wasn't the rain.
Rough night? Marcus looked up. A young woman stood beside his table, holding a coffee pot and a menu. She couldn't have been more than 25, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and eyes that seemed to hold genuine concern. Her name tag read Emma. He tried to speak, but found his voice had abandoned him. He simply nodded. She set down the menu and poured him a cup of coffee without asking. "This will help with the chill," she said. "Take your time looking at the menu. No rush." Marcus wrapped his hands around the warm mug. The simple act of holding something warm brought an unexpected comfort. He watched Emma move to check on the old man at the counter, refilling his cup and laughing at something he said. There was an ease about her, a lightness that seemed impossible given her surroundings. The diner was clearly struggling. The cracked seats, the flickering light in the corner, the menu with its laminated pages yellowed with age. When she returned, he still hadn't opened the menu. "I'm not very hungry," he admitted, his voice rough. "That's okay," Emma said, sliding into the booth across from him without invitation. "Sometimes you just need a place to sit and a hot drink. I get it." She studied his face for a moment. "You look like you've had the kind of day that makes you question everything." Marcus let out a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been something else entirely. "Something like that. Want to talk about it?" "You have other customers," he said, though he found himself wanting her to stay. Emma glanced around the empty diner. "I think I can spare a few minutes. Plus, Danny back there can handle it." She gestured toward the kitchen window where a middle-aged man in a white apron waved. "I'm Emma, by the way. Emma Chen." "Marcus," he said, leaving off his last name. For the first time in decades, he wanted to be just Marcus. They talked. Or rather, Emma talked, and Marcus listened. She told him about the diner, how it had belonged to her grandmother Rosie until she passed away 3 years ago. Emma had dropped out of college to keep it running, honoring her grandmother's memory. Business was tough. The rent kept going up. The neighborhood was changing. But she loved this place, loved the regulars who came in, loved making people feel at home, even if just for a meal. "My friends think I'm crazy," Emma said, laughing. "They're all working at tech startups or finance companies, making real money. And here I am, serving coffee and pancakes at midnight. But I don't know. There's something about this place. It matters to people. That has to count for something, right?" "It counts for more than you know. What about you?" Emma asked. "What do you do?" The question hung in the air. What did he do? Past tense seemed more appropriate now. "I worked in business," he said carefully. "Building things. Or at least I thought I was building things. Turns out I was just building card houses that fell at the first strong wind." Emma tilted her head. "That sounds like more than just a bad day at the office." "I lost everything today," Marcus said, surprised at his own honesty. "Everything I spent 30 years building. Gone in one afternoon." "I'm sorry," Emma said, and her sincerity was palpable. "That's brutal. But can I tell you something my grandmother used to say? She said that sometimes losing everything is the only way to figure out what actually matters. She lost her home in a fire when she was my age, lost everything except the clothes she was wearing. That's when she realized that the stuff didn't matter. The people did. The connections did." Marcus stared into his coffee. What if you lose the people too? What if you spent so long focused on building your empire that you forgot to build anything real? "Then you start over," Emma said simply. "You build it right this time." The bell above the door chimed. A group of young people stumbled in, laughing and soaked from the rain. Emma stood up. "Duty calls, but hey, Marcus, come back any time, okay? The coffee's always hot and the company's free." As she walked away to greet the new customers, Marcus realized something had shifted. The crushing weight on his chest had lightened just a fraction. He finished his coffee, left a $100 bill on the table, and walked back out into the rain. He didn't see Emma's shocked expression when she found it, or how she stood there staring at the bill for a full minute before carefully folding it and placing it in her apron pocket. The next morning, Marcus woke in his penthouse apartment feeling hollow. The space suddenly seemed absurd in its excess. 12-foot ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, furniture that cost more than most people's cars. And yet, the place felt empty, like a museum exhibit rather than a home. He realized he had never actually lived here. He had simply existed between meetings. His phone, which he had reluctantly turned back on, showed 237 missed calls and over 500 text messages. He scrolled through them with detached interest. Most were from journalists seeking comments. Others were from business associates, some gloating, others offering hollow sympathy that felt more like schadenfreude. A few were from lawyers, both his own and those representing the company. There was nothing from his daughter, Sarah. They hadn't spoken in 3 years, not since she told him she was dropping out of business school to become a painter, and he had called it a waste of her potential and privilege. Marcus made coffee in his state-of-the-art kitchen and stood at the window, watching the city wake up. Somewhere down there,
Emma was probably opening the diner, preparing for the morning rush. He wondered if she thought about the strange man who had left such an excessive tip. He wondered if she would remember him if he went back. He wondered why he cared so much about what a waitress he had just met thought of him. The days blurred together in a haze of legal meetings and financial discussions. Marcus met with lawyers who explained the complexities of his ouster. The board had been careful, documenting every decision he made that they deemed problematic. His aggressive acquisition strategy that had left the company over-leveraged. His resistance to their suggestions for diversification into emerging markets. His legendary temper, which had led to HR complaints they had quietly settled over the years. On paper, they had built an airtight case. In reality, they had simply wanted him gone so they could install someone more pliable, someone who would prioritize short-term stock prices over long-term vision. The financial situation was complex and infuriating. Marcus was still wealthy by any reasonable standard. He had personal investments, real estate holdings in 3 countries, accounts that existed outside the company's reach. But the bulk of his fortune had been tied up in Hale Industries stock, and the board was making it clear they would fight any attempt he made to sell it off quickly. They wanted him frozen out completely, unable to build a rival company or launch a hostile takeover bid. His lawyers assured him he could fight, that he could spend years in court battles that might result in vindication. But the thought exhausted him. What was he fighting for? To reclaim a company that didn't want him? To prove a point to people who had already made up their minds? On the 3rd evening after his ouster, Marcus found himself walking again. His feet carried him through the familiar streets of his neighborhood, then beyond into areas he never visited. Without consciously deciding to, he found himself standing outside Rosie's diner. Through the window, he could see Emma moving between tables, that same easy smile on her face as she chatted with customers. He watched her laugh at something an elderly woman said, watched her ruffle the hair of a young boy who was coloring on a paper placemat. There was something magnetic about her unself-conscious kindness. He almost walked away. What was he doing here? She was a stranger, someone he had met for 20 minutes. She had her own life, her own problems. She didn't need some washed-up executive hanging around her diner feeling sorry for himself. But something drew him forward, some need he couldn't name, and before he could second-guess himself, he was pushing through the door. Emma looked up at the bell's chime. Her face broke into a genuine smile when she saw him, a smile that reached her eyes and made something in his chest loosen. "Marcus, you came back. I was hoping you would." The warmth in her greeting surprised him. When was the last time someone had been genuinely happy to see him, not because of what he could do for them or what connections he could offer, but just because? "I hope it's okay," he said. "I know I'm probably just another customer taking up space." "Sit, sit," Emma said, gesturing to what he now thought of as his booth by the window. "You're not just another customer. Anyone who tips like you do gets VIP treatment." She poured him coffee without asking, remembering how he took it. "How have you been? Things any better?" Marcus considered lying, painting a picture of resilience and recovery. But something about Emma's open expression made him want to be honest. "Not really. Everything's still gone. I'm trying to figure out what comes next, but I don't even know where to start." Emma slid into the seat across from him. The diner was quiet tonight, just a few regulars scattered at the counter and in the booths. "Can I ask what happened? You don't have to tell me if you don't want to, but sometimes it helps to talk, and I'm a pretty good listener. Comes with the job." So Marcus told her. Not everything. He didn't mention the company's name or the scale of what he had lost.
But he told her about building something from nothing, about dedicating every waking hour to it for 30 years. He told her about the betrayal of people he had trusted, people he had promoted and enriched. He told her about waking up and not knowing who he was anymore without his title and his company. He told her things he hadn't told his lawyers or his therapist or anyone. Emma listened without interrupting. She didn't check her phone or glance at other tables. She just listened with complete attention, occasionally nodding or making small sounds of understanding. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment, stirring her own cup of coffee thoughtfully. Then she said something unexpected. It sounds like maybe this is a gift. A gift. Marcus couldn't keep the bitterness from his voice. I lost everything. You lost a company, but maybe you needed to lose it to find yourself. I mean, listen to how you talk about it. You dedicated your life to it. You don't mention family, friends, hobbies, passions, anything outside of work. That's not a life, Marcus. That's just existing. That's just running on a treadmill that never stops. Her words stung because they were true. When had he last read a book for pleasure, taken a vacation that wasn't combined with a business trip, had a conversation that wasn't about deals or strategy? So what do I do now? Whatever you want. That's the gift. You're free to become whoever you choose to be. Not who you were, not who everyone expected you to be, not who your company needed you to be. Who you choose. How many people get that chance? Most people spend their whole lives wondering what if. You get to actually find out. Over the next few weeks, Marcus became a regular fixture at Rosie's Diner. He came every evening around 9, after the dinner rush but before closing. It became the highlight of his day, the one thing he looked forward to. Emma would pour his coffee, and when things were slow, she would sit with him and they would talk. He learned about her life, about growing up in Queens with her grandmother after her parents died in a car accident when she was 7, about how Rosie had been everything to her, mother and father and best friend.
About how Rosie had built the diner from nothing in the 70s, working 18-hour days, 6 days a week for years to make it successful. She was the toughest person I ever knew, Emma said one night, her eyes distant with memory. But also the kindest. She never turned anyone away, even when they couldn't pay. During the recession in the 80s, she kept half the neighborhood fed on credit. Some of them never paid her back, but she said it didn't matter. Said money always came back around, but hunger was immediate. She sounds remarkable, Marcus said. She was. That's why I couldn't let this place die with her. Everyone said I was throwing my life away, my professors, my friends, even my grandmother at first. She wanted me to finish school, to have opportunities she never had. She worked her whole life so I wouldn't have to struggle like she did. But I couldn't let this place die. It's not just a diner. It's a piece of her, you know? It's her legacy. It's proof that she was here, that she mattered. Marcus understood legacy. He had spent 30 years building his. Now it had someone else's name on it. Do you ever regret it? Giving up college, giving up the life you could have had? Sometimes, Emma admitted. I wonder what I could have become. My major was business administration. I had good grades, internship offers. I wonder if I would have been good at it, if I would have built something big and important. But then I look around, and I see what I have become. I'm the person who makes sure old Joe gets his coffee every morning exactly how he likes it. I'm the person the nurses from Roosevelt Hospital come to when they need to decompress after a hard shift. I'm the person who kept my grandmother's dream alive. That's not nothing. It's not nothing, Marcus agreed, his voice rough. It's everything. It's more than I ever built. Don't say that. You built a whole company from nothing. That's huge. I built a machine that functioned without a soul. You built a community. Those aren't the same thing. As the weeks passed, Marcus began to notice things about the diner he hadn't seen before, patterns that his business mind couldn't help but analyze. The books were a disaster, invoices stuffed into folders with no organization or logical system. The menu hadn't been updated in years, with some items probably costing more to make than they brought in. The suppliers were overcharging, taking advantage of Emma's trusting nature and lack of business experience. The layout was inefficient, causing Danny to waste time moving between stations. The place was bleeding money slowly, death by 1,000 cuts. He started to help, carefully at first, not wanting to overstep. He offered to look at the books one night, framing it as something to keep himself busy. Emma, who was drowning in paperwork she didn't fully understand, accepted gratefully. What Marcus found shocked him. The diner should have gone under years ago. The only thing keeping it alive was Emma's refusal to give up, the fact that she paid herself almost nothing, and, apparently, some sort of miracle. "Emma, you're working 80 hours a week and taking home less than minimum wage," Marcus said one night, spreadsheets scattered across the table between them. "I know, but if I paid myself more, I couldn't make rent on the building. And if I raise prices, I'll lose my regulars. Most of them are on fixed incomes, Social Security, and pensions. They come here because we're affordable. Old Joe has been coming here for breakfast every morning for 20 years. I can't price him out. There has to be a middle ground. Let me look at this more closely. I think I can find some savings without compromising what makes this place special." Emma looked at him curiously. "You're really good at this stuff, like really good. This isn't just someone who worked in business. You see things instantly that I would never notice. Did you run your own business before everything fell apart?" Marcus chose his words carefully. "I was involved at a high level. I learned a lot about how companies work, how to spot inefficiencies, how to maximize value without sacrificing quality. But I also learned a lot about how to lose sight of what matters. You haven't made that mistake. You've kept your soul. That's worth more than any profit margin." Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus worked quietly in the background, applying decades of business expertise to Emma's small operation. He renegotiated supplier contracts, using old contacts who didn't ask too many questions. He restructured the menu, keeping prices low, but eliminating the worst money losers and highlighting the most profitable items more prominently. He set up a simple but effective bookkeeping system that would let Emma see at a glance where she stood financially. He even helped train Danny on inventory management to reduce waste, teaching him techniques for tracking food costs that Danny picked up quickly. The changes were small individually, but together they made a significant difference. By the end of the month, the diner was actually turning a profit for the first time in over a year. Not a huge profit, but enough that Emma could finally pay herself something resembling a living wage. She was stunned when she saw the numbers. "How did you do this?" she asked, looking at the balance sheet Marcus had created. "I've been struggling for 3 years, barely keeping my head above water, and you fixed it in 2 weeks. What kind of business did you work in?" "The kind where I learned to see systems and patterns. But Emma, I didn't fix anything. These solutions were always here. You were just so busy keeping the place running day to day that you couldn't see the bigger picture. That's not a criticism. You can't do everything yourself. Sometimes you need someone to step back and look at the whole system, see where the inefficiencies are." Emma looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. There was gratitude there, but also something else. Curiosity, maybe suspicion. "Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Who are you really? Because this isn't just someone who worked in business at a high level. This is someone who's done this at the very top. You move like someone who's used to being in charge. You negotiate like someone who's used to getting exactly what they want. You see problems and solutions instantly. So who are you really? Marcus felt his carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. He wanted to tell her the truth, to trust her with who he really was. But he was afraid. Afraid she would see him differently. Afraid she would treat him like Marcus Hale, failed billionaire, object of pity or curiosity, instead of just Marcus, the guy who drank coffee in her diner every night. Afraid that this fragile thing they had built, this friendship that had become the most real thing in his life, would change. "I'm someone who's trying to figure out who he is without his old life," Marcus said finally. "Someone who spent 30 years being defined by a title and a company, and now has to figure out who he is underneath all that. Can that be enough for now?" Emma studied his face for a long moment, her dark eyes searching. Then she nodded slowly. "For now. But Marcus, whoever you were, whatever you did, whatever title you had or lost, it doesn't change the fact that you've been a good friend to me. You've helped me save my grandmother's legacy. You've been kind and genuine and real. That matters more than any business success or failure. That's who you are to me." Marcus felt something break open inside his chest, something warm and painful and necessary. "Thank you," he managed. "You have no idea what that means to me." The holidays approached, bringing with them a particular kind of loneliness that Marcus had never fully experienced before. In the past, the holidays had been filled with obligatory events, company parties where he networked, charity galas where he wrote large checks for the tax deduction and the press, visits to Sarah's mother's house on Christmas Day that were tense and brief. He had never actually been alone for the holidays. This year was different. Sarah didn't call. His ex-wife had made it clear she wanted nothing to do with him. The invitations to parties and galas had dried up completely. On Thanksgiving, Marcus spent the day alone in his apartment, ordering takeout from a Chinese restaurant because everything else was closed. He tried to watch football but couldn't focus. He tried to read, but the words blurred. He stood at his window and watched the city, wondering how many other people were alone today, isolated in their expensive apartments or cheap rooms, all of them pretending they were fine. In the evening, unable to stand his own company anymore, he went to the diner. He found Emma and Danny in the kitchen, preparing meals in aluminum containers. The diner was officially closed, but they were clearly working. "Marcus," Emma said when she saw him, "Happy Thanksgiving! We're just finishing up the deliveries. Want to help?" "Deliveries?" "For the neighborhood. We make Thanksgiving dinners for about 40 people who can't leave their apartments or don't have family. It's something my grandmother started years ago. Come on, grab some containers. You can help us deliver them." For the next 3 hours, Marcus carried plates of turkey and stuffing and mashed potatoes to apartments throughout the neighborhood. He met Mrs. Rodriguez in her 5th-floor walk-up, who cried when she saw the food and insisted on showing him photos of her grandchildren. He met Mr. Patterson, a veteran who lived alone with his cat and told long stories about Korea. He met the Chen family, who had just immigrated and didn't quite understand Thanksgiving yet, but were grateful for the food and the company. Emma moved through it all with practiced ease, knowing everyone's names, asking about their families, remembering details from previous visits. She introduced Marcus as her friend, and people welcomed him without question, assuming he was part of this tradition she had created. "This is what Thanksgiving should be," Emma said as they walked back to the diner, their breath visible in the cold November air. "Not about the perfect meal, or the perfect family, or the perfect Instagram post. Just about making sure people aren't alone, making sure people know someone cares." Marcus realized he was crying, silent tears running down his face in the cold night. He tried to wipe them away discreetly, but Emma saw. She didn't say anything, just took his hand and held it as they walked. It was the first genuine human comfort he had felt in longer than he could remember. Not a handshake or a professional hug or the perfunctory kiss on the cheek at society events. Just a hand holding his, warm and real and completely undemanding. They sat in the diner after the deliveries were done, the lights dimmed, eating leftover turkey and pie. Danny had gone home to his own family. It was just the two of them in the quiet space. "Thank you for letting me be part of this," Marcus said. "I didn't realize how much I needed it." Everyone needs to feel useful, to feel like they matter. That's what community is. It's not just about receiving help, it's about giving it too. You mattered to those people tonight. You made their day better. I think they made mine better. Emma smiled. That's how it works. December brought a crisis that would test everything they had built. Emma received a letter from her landlord, or rather from the property management company that had recently bought the building. They were raising the rent 40% starting in January. Emma called Marcus in a panic, her voice shaking on the phone. "I can't afford this," she said. "Even with all the improvements we made, even with the better margins, there's no way. I've run the numbers 100 times. I'm going to lose the diner. I'm going to lose my grandmother's legacy. Everything she worked for, everything she built, it's going to end because I couldn't make it work." Marcus felt a familiar fire ignite in his chest. The same fire that had driven him to build Hale Industries from a single office and a dream. But this time, it wasn't about him. It wasn't about proving he was the smartest, or most ruthless, or most successful. It was about Emma, about protecting something precious, about refusing to let corporate greed destroy something meaningful. "Let me handle this," Marcus said. "Emma, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? What are you going to do? What I'm good at. Let me fight this battle. You've given me so much. Let me give you this." He spent the next week deploying skills he hadn't used since his ouster, falling back into patterns he knew intimately. He researched the property management company, Morrison Holdings, discovering they were over-leveraged and struggling with cash flow issues. They owned several properties in the area, including 4 vacant commercial spaces that had been empty for over 6 months, costing them money every day in opportunity costs and property taxes. Armed with this information, armed with the knowledge of their weaknesses, he scheduled a meeting with the company's CEO, David Morrison, using his real name for the first time since entering Emma's life. The receptionist's eyes widened when she saw his name on the appointment calendar. David Morrison himself came out to greet him personally, curiosity and calculation in his expression. "Marcus Hale? I heard you'd had some troubles at Hale Industries. What brings you to my office?" They sat in Morrison's corner office, expensive but not tasteful, the kind of space designed to intimidate rather than welcome. Marcus had sat in 1,000 offices like this. He knew how to read them, how to read the person behind the desk. "I'm here about a property you own," Marcus said calmly. "A diner called Rosie's on Amsterdam Avenue. You're raising the rent 40%. I want you to reconsider." Morrison leaned back in his leather chair, a practiced gesture meant to demonstrate power. "It's just business, Marcus. You of all people should understand that. The area is gentrifying rapidly. Property values are rising. We need to maximize returns for our investors. The current tenant is paying below market rate, way below." "I do understand business," Marcus said, his voice level and cold in a way he hadn't used in months. "I also understand that you have 4 vacant commercial properties within a mile of that diner. Properties that have been empty for over 6 months, costing you approximately $40,000 per month in lost revenue and carrying costs. I understand that your company is over-leveraged by about 15%, which is making your board nervous.
I understand that you're looking at a potential cash flow crisis in the next quarter if you don't move some inventory. How am I doing so far?" Morrison's expression tightened. "You've done your homework." "I always do." "Now, here's what I'm proposing. I have buyers for 3 of those vacant properties. Real buyers, not speculators. Small business owners looking for spaces in developing neighborhoods. They're ready to move quickly, willing to pay at or slightly above your asking prices. All I need from you is a 5-year lease for Rosie's Diner at the current rate with a modest 3% annual escalation clause. That's reasonable, that's sustainable, that's fair."
"And if I refuse?"
"Then I make some phone calls, and your other tenants find out exactly how desperate your financial situation is. I've still got relationships in this city, Morrison. People who owe me favors. People who would be interested in organizing a tenant advocacy group. Maybe bringing in some investigative journalists to look at your business practices. Is that really worth it? 3 problem properties solved, steady rent from a reliable tenant, or a legal and PR nightmare?" Morrison was silent for a long moment, weighing his options. Finally, he extended his hand. "You've got a deal. But Hale, I have to ask, why? Why do you care so much about one struggling diner? You're Marcus Hale. You built a global company. This is so far beneath you." Marcus stood, ignoring the offered hand. "That's where you're wrong. This isn't beneath me. Everything I did before was beneath me. I was building monuments to my own ego. This time, I'm building something that actually matters. You'll understand the difference one day, when you need someone to care about you beyond your portfolio value." When Marcus returned to the diner that evening, Emma took one look at his face and knew. She didn't ask for details, she just threw her arms around him, and Marcus hugged her back, feeling more like himself than he had in years. Not the self he had been, but the self he was becoming. Someone who used his skills to protect rather than conquer. Someone who built people up rather than tearing them down. "You did it," Emma said, her voice muffled against his shoulder. "You saved the diner. You saved my grandmother's legacy. How can I ever thank you?" "You already have, every day, just by being who you are." That night, after the diner closed, Emma and Marcus sat in the back booth, the one they had claimed as their own. The window had started to frost over, creating patterns like ferns growing across the glass. The street outside was quiet, the city settling into winter sleep. Steam from their coffee cups rose in delicate spirals. "I need to tell you something," Emma said, her voice serious in a way he rarely heard. "I know who you are. I've known for about 6 weeks now." Marcus felt his stomach drop, a sensation like falling. "How?" "One of my business professors in college did a case study on Hale Industries. It was a whole unit on corporate culture and aggressive growth strategies. I recognized you from the photos in the presentation, but you looked so different that first night, so utterly broken, that I convinced myself I was wrong. But as we worked together, the way you think, the way you solve problems, the way you just negotiated with Morrison without breaking a sweat, it all confirmed it. You're Marcus Hale. You built Hale Industries from nothing into a multi-billion-dollar global company. You were one of the most powerful businessmen in America." "Were" is the operative word. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want to be that person anymore. I didn't want you to see me as Marcus Hale, failed tycoon, object of pity or curiosity. I just wanted to be Marcus, just a guy getting coffee." Emma reached across the table and took his hand. "Here's the thing. I knew, and I didn't say anything either, because it didn't matter. The man who came into my diner that rainy night wasn't Marcus Hale, billionaire CEO with his face in the business journals. He was just Marcus, someone who was hurting and alone and needed a friend. I didn't want that to change. I didn't want you to think I was helping you because of who you used to be or what you might be able to do for me.
I helped you because I cared about you, the person, not the resume. Marcus felt tears pricking his eyes. Thank you for seeing me, for treating me like a human being instead of a title or a cautionary tale or a bank account with legs. You gave me something I didn't even know I needed. What's that? A reason to become someone worth being. A reason to build something real instead of just impressive. A reason to care about people instead of just using them. Emma squeezed his hand. Can I tell you something? I have an idea. A business idea. And I need your help to make it work. What kind of idea? I want to expand. Not into some big corporate chain, but carefully, thoughtfully. I want to open another Rosie's in a different neighborhood that needs it. Somewhere where people need a gathering place, a community hub. I want to bring what we have here to other people. But I can't do it alone. I don't have the money or the expertise. I need a partner, a real partner, not just a consultant or a friend who helps out. Someone who shares the vision and the risk and the reward. What do you think? Marcus looked at her, this young woman who had given him back his purpose, who had shown him what it meant to build something meaningful. He thought about his old life, the boardrooms and the hostile takeovers and the endless pursuit of more. He thought about the person he had been, ruthless and successful and utterly alone. He thought about the person he was becoming, humbler and kinder, and genuinely happy for the first time in decades. I think, Marcus said slowly, that I would be honored. But Emma, you need to understand what you're getting into. Partnering with me means attention. The media will find out eventually. People will ask questions, make assumptions. Some will say you're using me for my money or connections. Others will say I'm using you to rehabilitate my image. Are you ready for that? Are you ready to stop hiding? Emma countered. Because that's what you've been doing. Hiding from your old life instead of integrating it into your new one. If we're going to do this, we do it as equals. No hiding, no shame. Just two people who respect each other, building something good together. Marcus smiled, really smiled, for the first time in months. The kind of smile that reached his eyes and changed his whole face. Okay, let's do this right. Let's build something that matters. They worked through the night, fueled by coffee and excitement and possibility. Emma sketched out her vision for what Rosie's could become. Not a chain, she insisted, but a collection of community spaces, each one unique but connected by shared values. Each location would reflect its neighborhood, employ local people, feature local artists. They would be gathering places, not just restaurants. Spaces where people could feel at home, where everyone knew your name, where you mattered not because of what you could afford, but simply because you were there. Marcus contributed his expertise, but differently than he had worked before. He asked questions instead of making pronouncements. He listened to Emma's instincts instead of overriding them with data. Together, they sketched out a business plan that balanced fiscal responsibility with social mission. They talked about values and vision, about what success would actually look like. Not just profit margins, but community impact. Not just growth, but sustainable, meaningful expansion. As dawn broke over the city, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Marcus looked across the table at Emma, surrounded by papers and half-empty coffee cups, her eyes bright with excitement despite the late hour. In that moment, he realized something profound. He hadn't lost everything in that boardroom 9 months ago. He had simply lost the things that didn't actually matter, making room for the things that did. "Thank you," he said. Emma looked up from the business plan they were sketching. "For what?" "For giving me a second chance. Not at business or success or redemption in the eyes of the world. A second chance at being human, at building something that matters, at connecting with another person in a way that's real and genuine and not transactional. Everyone deserves a second chance, Emma said. The question is what we do with it. And Marcus, I think we're going to do something pretty amazing. The winter passed in a flurry of focused activity. Marcus and Emma formalized their partnership, with lawyers drawing up agreements. Marcus insisted that Emma maintain majority control, 60% to his 40%, ensuring that her vision would always be paramount. This wasn't a takeover, he explained to the puzzled attorneys. This was a true collaboration between equals, or rather, between a visionary and someone who could help execute that vision. They secured financing through a combination of Marcus's personal funds and small business loans. Marcus leveraged some of his remaining investments, selling off assets he had accumulated over the years. A vacation home in the Hamptons he had visited twice. A collection of art he had bought as investments, rather than because he loved it. Stock holdings in companies he no longer believed in. He liquidated pieces of his old life to fund this new one, and each sale felt not like a loss, but like liberation. Their first expansion location opened in Brooklyn in March, in a neighborhood called Bed-Stuy that reminded Emma of where she grew up. The space had been a failed coffee shop, all exposed brick and industrial fixtures. They kept the bones of the place, but warmed it up with Emma's touches. Photographs of the original Rosies lined one wall, telling the story of Emma's grandmother and the values she instilled. They hired locally, putting out calls at community centers and churches, looking for people who understood the neighborhood, who had roots there. The manager they hired was a woman named Patricia, 52 years old, who had been laid off from her corporate job and thought her career was over. She had grown up 3 blocks from the new location and knew everyone in the neighborhood. She understood instinctively what Emma was trying to create because she had lived it, had experienced what it meant when a community had places that brought people together. Marcus spent hours training Patricia, not just on operations, but on philosophy. You're not just running a restaurant, he explained. You're building a community hub. The goal isn't to maximize profit by turning tables quickly. It's to create a space where people want to linger, where they feel valued, where they build connections. Some of our most important customers will be the ones who sit for hours over a single cup of coffee. That's not inefficiency. That's exactly what we're trying to create. Patricia understood immediately. Like how the library used to be when I was a kid. A place you could just exist without anyone pressuring you to spend money or leave. A place that belonged to everyone. Exactly like that, Emma said, smiling. The second location opened in Queens 2 months later, not far from where Emma had grown up with her grandmother. This one was smaller, more intimate, tucked into a neighborhood that was rapidly changing as developers moved in. They negotiated a long-term lease with a landlord who understood what they were trying to do. An older man who had owned property in the neighborhood for 40 years and was horrified by what gentrification was doing to the community he loved. Word was spreading about these diners that seemed to exist outside the normal logic of modern business. Food bloggers wrote about them, but not in the usual way. They didn't focus on the food alone, though the food was good, honest, well-prepared comfort dishes at reasonable prices. They wrote about the atmosphere, the way strangers talked to each other at the counter, the way regulars looked out for newcomers, the way the staff seemed to actually care about the customers beyond their tips. Social media accounts dedicated to the diners sprang up, run not by the company but by customers. People posted photos and stories. The nurse who came in after her shift and always found someone to talk to. The elderly man whose birthday the staff remembered and celebrated with a free slice of pie and a candle. The struggling artist who sketched in the corner booth and whose drawings now hung on the walls.
The teenagers who did homework there after school because it was safer than the streets and the staff kept an eye on them. Emma managed the social media presence herself, carefully cultivating an authentic voice. She shared stories of the regulars, recipes from Rosie's original notebooks, the philosophy behind what they were building. She was honest about struggles and challenges. When they had to raise prices slightly due to increased food costs, she explained why in detail, showing the numbers and asking for understanding. The community responded not with outrage, but with support, many customers leaving larger tips to help offset the increase for those who couldn't afford it. Marcus discovered he was happier than he had ever been, despite working just as hard as he had at Hale Industries. The difference was the work itself. He wasn't building an empire for empire's sake. He wasn't chasing growth as an abstract goal. Every decision was filtered through a simple question that Emma had taught him to ask: does this serve our community? If the answer was no, they didn't do it, no matter how profitable it might be. They turned down a franchise offer from a wealthy investor who wanted to open 20 locations in 3 years.
The money would have been substantial, but the investor's vision was about standardization and efficiency, about turning their model into something reproducible and scalable. That wasn't what they were building. Each location needed to be born from its community, to reflect its neighborhood, to develop organically. In May, Marcus received an unexpected call from Richard Chen. His former friend and colleague, the man who had voted to oust him, wanted to meet. Marcus suggested they meet at the original Rosie's, curious about what Richard wanted and secure enough now to face his past. Richard arrived looking haggard, older than he should have looked. The stress was evident in the lines around his eyes, the gray in his hair that hadn't been there a year ago. He slid into the booth across from Marcus, glancing around the diner with poorly concealed confusion. "This is what you've been doing?" Richard asked. "Running a diner? Marcus, I don't understand. You could rebuild. You still have connections, capital, knowledge. You could start another company." "I am building something," Marcus said calmly, "just not what you think I should be building." "The company is in trouble," Richard said abruptly. "Price is destroying everything you created. He's gutted R&D completely, cut it by 80%. All our best engineers have left. He's alienated our biggest clients with his aggressive contract terms. The company culture is toxic. People are terrified to speak up. 3 executives have quit in the last 2 months. The stock price is up because he's cut costs and boosted short-term profits, but the foundation is crumbling. We have nothing in the pipeline, no innovation, no vision, just quarterly results that keep the board happy while the company dies slowly." Marcus sipped his coffee, Emma's coffee, and felt surprisingly little emotion. A year ago, this news would have filled him with vindication and anger. Now it just felt sad, like watching something inevitable play out. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because we made a mistake. I made a mistake. We thought you were the problem, that you were too rigid, too aggressive, too unwilling to adapt. But Price isn't adapting the company. He's strip mining it. And the board is starting to panic. They're realizing what we've done." "And what do you want from me?" Richard leaned forward, desperation evident. "We want you to come back. We can structure a deal that removes Price and reinstalls you as CEO. You can fix this, Marcus. You built the company once. You can rebuild it. You're the only one who can. Please, I know I don't deserve to ask, but I'm asking anyway. Come back. For a moment, just a moment." Marcus felt the old pull. The temptation to reclaim what was his, to prove everyone wrong, to return in triumph and show them all that he had been right. The desire to walk back into that building, his building, and take command again. To feel that rush of power and control and importance. But then he looked around the diner.
at Emma behind the counter, laughing with the regular customer, at old Joe reading his newspaper and doing the crossword puzzle, at the 2 nurses from Roosevelt Hospital decompressing after a night shift, at the community they had built, the lives they touched every day in small but meaningful ways. "No," Marcus said, quietly but firmly. Richard looked stunned, as if he had never considered that Marcus might refuse. "No? Marcus, this is your life's work, your legacy, everything you built. You can't just walk away." "It was my life's work. Past tense. I've moved on, Richard. I'm building something new, something better, something that actually matters beyond quarterly earnings reports and stock prices. I'm building community. I'm building relationships. I'm building a life that I can be proud of when I look in the mirror." "You're choosing this, a diner, over your company? Over everything we built together?" "I'm not choosing a diner over a company. I'm choosing happiness over ambition. I'm choosing relationships over power. I'm choosing the man I want to be over the man I was." There's a difference, Richard. And until you understand that difference, you're going to keep making the same mistakes. Richard sat back, struggling to process what he was hearing. "So you'll just let the company die?" "I'll help you," Marcus said, "but not by coming back, by teaching you what I've learned. The company doesn't need the old Marcus Hale. It needs leaders who understand that business is about people, not just profit. That sustainable success comes from taking care of your employees, your customers, your community. That short-term gains at the expense of long-term health is just another form of failure. If you're willing to learn that, really learn it, and implement it, I'll consult, I'll advise, but I won't return a CEO." That chapter is closed. Over the following months, Marcus worked with Richard and several board members who were genuinely interested in changing course. He taught them about creating corporate cultures that valued employees as humans, not just resources. He showed them research on companies that prioritized long-term sustainability over short-term profits, and how those companies consistently outperformed in the long run. He helped them understand that treating people well wasn't just morally right, but also good business. It was slow, frustrating work. Many of the board members resisted, clinging to the old models of corporate governance that prioritized shareholder value above all else. But a few understood. A few saw what Marcus was trying to teach them. Gradually, they built a coalition. Price was eventually bought out of his contract, expensive but necessary. They installed a new CEO, a woman named Jennifer Ortiz, who had built her reputation on conscious capitalism and stakeholder value. Marcus received offers to return in various capacities, each one with significant financial incentives attached: board member with substantial compensation, chief strategy officer, even CEO again, with the board promising they had learned their lesson and would support his vision. He declined them all. Each refusal felt not like a loss, but like an affirmation of the choice he had made, the person he was becoming. By summer, Rosie's Diners had expanded to 6 locations across New York City, each one thriving and serving as a hub for its community. Each one was unique, reflecting its neighborhood, while maintaining the core values that Emma and Marcus had established. They employed over 60 people now, and Marcus made sure every employee received not just fair wages, but health insurance, paid time off, and opportunities for advancement. Several of their managers had been promoted from within, people who started as line cooks or servers and showed leadership potential. Marcus established a foundation with some of his remaining wealth, focused on helping other small businesses survive and thrive with dignity. He provided microloans with reasonable terms, business mentorship, help navigating regulations and permits. He taught classes at the local community college, sharing the lessons he had learned the hard way.
His students were not privileged business school candidates destined for corner offices. They were immigrants with dreams, single mothers trying to build something for their families, people who'd been knocked down and were fighting to get back up. One evening in July, on a night that was warm and clear with summer possibility, Marcus's daughter Sarah showed up at the original Rosie's unannounced. He hadn't seen her in almost 4 years. She had changed, grown into a woman he barely recognized. Her hair was cut short in an edgy style. She wore paint-stained jeans and a vintage band t-shirt. There was a confidence in her posture that hadn't been there before, an assurance that came from knowing who she was. "Hi, Dad," she said, sliding into the booth across from him. Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Sarah, how did you find me? Your transformation has been kind of hard to miss. It's all over the business news. Marcus Hale, the humbled billionaire who found redemption slinging hash in a diner. I had to see if it was true, if you had really changed, or if this was just another strategy, another angle, another way to win." Her words stung, but he understood them. He had earned her skepticism. "What did you want to see? If you had really changed, if you had finally learned that there's more to life than winning, more to relationships than transactions, more to fatherhood than quarterly check-ins between business trips." Emma appeared at the table, immediately sensing the tension radiating between them. "Hi, I'm Emma. Can I get you some coffee? Something to eat?" "You're the famous waitress," Sarah said, studying Emma with an artist's eye for detail. "The one who saved my father's soul. Or so the articles say." "I'm just someone who poured him coffee when he needed it," Emma said evenly, not rising to the implicit challenge in Sarah's tone. "The saving part, that was all him. He did the work." She glanced at Marcus. "I'll give you two some privacy." After Emma left, Sarah and Marcus sat in silence for a long moment. Marcus wanted to fill the silence with explanations, justifications, apologies, but he forced himself to wait, to let Sarah lead. This was her moment, her choice to be here. He would follow where she led. "I was happy when you lost the company," Sarah said finally. "Is that terrible? Your own daughter was happy when you lost everything. But I was, because I thought maybe, finally, you'd have to look at what you'd become. The way you treated Mom like she was just another employee who wasn't performing up to standards. The way you treated me, like I was a project that kept disappointing you. I thought losing everything might make you human again." Marcus felt the words like physical blows, but he didn't deflect them. "You were right to feel that way. I was a terrible father. I was so consumed with building and winning that I forgot what I was supposed to be building and winning for. I turned everyone in my life into instruments for my success. I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm so deeply sorry for the years I wasted, for the relationship we should have had but didn't, because I was too blind and arrogant to see what mattered." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Do you mean that? Because I've heard apologies from you before, usually right before you went back to doing exactly what you'd apologized for. I mean it. I can't get those years back. I can't undo the hurt I caused, but I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to be someone who deserves a second chance with you, if you're willing to give it. And if you're not, I understand that too. I'll accept whatever relationship you're willing to have with me, even if that relationship is none at all." They talked for hours, really talked, in a way they never had before. Sarah told him about her life, about the art she was creating, about the gallery show she had coming up in September. She told him about her girlfriend, Maya, who taught high school English, and had helped Sarah understand that her worth wasn't determined by her father's approval. She told him about the years of therapy she had needed to undo the damage of growing up with a father who measured everything in terms of success and failure. Marcus listened without interrupting, without defending himself, without trying to minimize her pain. He told her about the last year, about losing everything and finding himself in this small diner. He told her about Emma and what he was learning about community and connection. He showed her a vulnerability he had never been capable of before, admitting his failures without caveat or excuse. When Sarah finally left, hours later, she hugged him. It was tentative, uncertain, but it was real. "I want to get to know this version of you, Dad," she said. "The real you. Not the CEO, not the billionaire, not the man who needed to win every interaction. Just you. Just my father. Can we try that?" "I'd like that more than anything," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm bringing Maya to meet you next week."
If you're serious about being different, I want her to see it. She's skeptical. She thinks this is just another phase for you. I'll prove to her it's not. I'll prove it to you both, however long that takes. After Sarah left, Emma came and sat down across from him. She didn't say anything, just took his hand and held it while Marcus cried quietly, releasing years of accumulated regret and grief and hope. As autumn approached, marking nearly a year since that first rainy night, Rosie's Diners had grown to 10 locations across New York City. But the numbers, while satisfying, weren't what made Marcus proud. It was the stories, the communities they had helped build and strengthen, the employees whose lives had changed because they worked in environments that respected them, the customers who had found friendship and connection and belonging in these small spaces. Local news ran a feature on their 10th location opening, interviewing customers and employees. An elderly woman named Mrs. Washington talked about how the diner had become her second home after her husband died. A young man named Jamal talked about how Emma had given him a job when he was fresh out of prison and no one else would hire him, and how he was now managing his own location. A nurse talked about how the diner was her refuge after difficult shifts, where she could process what she had seen and remember that there was still kindness in the world. Business schools began using their model as a case study, but not in the way they had studied Hale Industries. This wasn't about aggressive growth or market domination. This was about sustainable, values-based business, about proving that you could be successful without sacrificing your principles, about showing that taking care of people was good for the bottom line and good for the soul. Marcus began receiving speaking invitations, not just from business schools, but from community organizations, nonprofits, groups trying to build sustainable local economies. He spoke honestly about his transformation, about what he had lost and what he had found. He didn't paint himself as a hero or a success story. He presented himself as someone who had gotten lost and was trying to find his way back to being human. One evening in late September, Marcus and Emma stood outside the original Rosie's, watching their staff close up for the night. The air had that particular quality of early fall in New York, still warm, but with a hint of the coming cold.
The street was busy with people coming and going, the neighborhood alive with the energy of a community that knew itself. "Do you ever miss it?" Emma asked, leaning against the brick wall of the diner. "Your old life, the power, the prestige, the feeling of being important." Marcus considered the question honestly. He had learned not to give easy answers, to really think about what he felt. "Sometimes I miss the rush of closing a big deal, that moment when everything aligns perfectly and you know you've won. I miss the satisfaction of seeing a complex strategy work exactly as planned. But I don't miss the person I was. I don't miss the constant anxiety that I might lose it all, which is ironic since I did lose it all and discovered I'm better off. I don't miss the loneliness, even when I was surrounded by hundreds of employees. I don't miss measuring my worth by my net worth." "No regrets, then?" "Only one. I regret that it took losing everything to find what really mattered. I wish I had learned these lessons when I was younger, when my parents were still alive, when my marriage might have been saved, when Sarah was little and still thought I hung the moon. Those years are gone. I can't get them back, but I can make sure I don't waste any more years chasing things that don't matter."
Emma took his hand, their fingers intertwining naturally. Over the months, their relationship had deepened into something neither of them had explicitly named, but both understood. It was more than friendship, built on shared vision and genuine respect, and something deeper that neither wanted to rush or label.
"You know what I think?" Emma said. "I think you can't change the past, but you're creating a pretty amazing future. And for what it's worth, I don't think you could have become this person without going through what you went through. Sometimes we need to be completely broken down before we can be rebuilt into something better. It's like kintsugi, that Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold. The breaks become part of the beauty."
When did you get so wise?
I learned from my grandmother, and from a guy who wandered into my diner one rainy night and reminded me that everyone has a story, everyone is fighting battles we can't see, and everyone deserves kindness and a second chance.
That guy sounds pretty smart.
Emma laughed. He has his moments. They stood there in the gathering dusk, watching the city flow around them. Marcus Hale had lost his company, his fortune, his reputation. And in losing everything, he had gained something infinitely more valuable. He had found purpose beyond profit. He had found connection beyond transaction. He had found love, friendship, family, and community. He had found himself, or rather, he had built a new self from the rubble of the old one, a better self, a more human self. The next morning, Marcus woke early and walked to the original diner to help with the breakfast rush. It had become his routine, this simple act of service. He prepped vegetables alongside Danny. He refilled coffee for the early morning regulars. He chatted with old Joe about the Yankees' chances next season. He listened to Mrs. Rodriguez talk about her grandson's graduation. He existed not as Marcus Hale, former billionaire, but as Marcus, the guy who helped out at Rosie's. Around mid-morning, after the rush had died down, Emma pulled him aside. "I have something to tell you," she said, her expression serious but unreadable. Marcus felt a flutter of anxiety. "What is it?" "I got a call this morning from a network executive. They want to do a reality show about us, about the diners, about our story, about building community-focused businesses. They're calling it Starting Over, and they want to follow us for a whole season. The money they're offering is substantial. It would let us expand faster, help more neighborhoods, employ more people." Marcus was quiet for a moment, thinking. A year ago, he would have jumped at the opportunity, the exposure, the validation, the platform. But now he saw the potential pitfalls. "What do you think?" "I think it could be amazing, or it could ruin everything we've built. Reality TV has a way of distorting things, of creating drama where there isn't any, of turning real people into characters. I don't want that for us, for our employees, for our customers. But the good we could do with that money and reach? Then let's make sure we control the narrative," Marcus said. "If we do this, we do it on our terms. We have creative approval. We make sure they show the reality, the actual work and struggle and joy of what we're doing. Not manufactured drama, not fake conflicts, the real thing. If they can't agree to that, we walk away." Emma smiled. "See, this is why I need you as a partner. You think strategically, without losing sight of what matters." They negotiated with the network for weeks, bringing in lawyers and insisting on unprecedented creative control. The network pushed back. Marcus and Emma held firm. Finally, the network agreed, intrigued enough by their story and confident enough in its inherent drama that they were willing to take the risk.
The show began filming in November. The cameras followed them through the daily operations of running the diners, the challenges and triumphs, the moments of connection and community. They filmed Emma training new employees, teaching them that their job was about more than taking orders. They filmed Marcus negotiating with suppliers, using his old skills in service of keeping prices affordable. They filmed the regulars, the people whose lives intersected with the diners in meaningful ways. The network wanted to create artificial conflict, to push Marcus and Emma to argue on camera. They refused. Yes, they disagreed sometimes. Yes, they had different perspectives. But they had learned to work through differences with respect and communication. That was part of the story too, showing that partnerships didn't have to be combative to be effective. When the show aired in January, exactly 1 year after Marcus had been ousted from Hale Industries, the response was overwhelming. People were hungry for this kind of story, for proof that business could be done differently, for evidence that success didn't require ruthlessness, for hope that starting over was possible at any age, after any failure. The ratings exceeded expectations. More importantly, the show inspired people. They received thousands of messages from people who were starting their own community-focused businesses, who were leaving corporate jobs to do something meaningful, who were finding the courage to rebuild after their own failures. But with visibility came challenges. Investors approached them with big money, wanting to franchise the concept and expand nationally. Food critics came, expecting elevated cuisine, and wrote confused reviews when they found simple, honest food. Former colleagues from Marcus's past life showed up, some to congratulate, others to subtly mock his reduced circumstances. Through it all, Marcus and Emma held firm to their values. They expanded slowly, carefully, only into neighborhoods where they could genuinely serve the community. They turned down more opportunities than they accepted. They measured success not in locations opened or revenue generated, but in lives touched and communities strengthened. In March, on a night that felt like that first rainy evening, Marcus sat in his usual booth at the original Rosie's. The place was busy but not frantic, full of the pleasant hum of conversation and connection. Emma slid into the seat across from him, 2 cups of coffee in hand. "We did it," she said. 1 year, 10 locations, dozens of employees, thousands of customers. We actually did it. "You did it," Marcus corrected. "I just helped." "We did it together," Emma said firmly. "That's the whole point, isn't it? That we're better together than we could ever be alone. That real strength comes from connection, not isolation. That the best things we build are built with other people." Marcus raised his coffee cup. "To building things that matter." Emma clinked her cup against his. "To second chances." They sat there as the evening deepened, watching through the window as the city moved around them. Marcus thought about the man he had been a year ago, standing in the rain, believing his life was over. That man had been so wrong. His life hadn't ended. It had finally, truly begun. The bell above the door chimed. A man walked in, soaked from a sudden spring rain, looking lost and defeated. Marcus recognized that look. He had worn it himself. Emma noticed too. She stood up, grabbed a menu and the coffee pot, and walked over, with that same warm smile she had given Marcus a year ago. "Rough night?" Emma asked the stranger. Marcus watched as she poured coffee, as she offered kindness without judgment, as she gave someone else what she had given him. And he understood that this was the real legacy they were building. Not diners or businesses or even communities, though those mattered. The real legacy was kindness perpetuated, compassion multiplied, hope renewed and passed forward. He thought about his old definition of success, market share and stock prices and corner offices. He thought about how empty those victories had been, how they had left him hollow, even as he accumulated more. And he thought about his new definition, The smile on old Joe's face when he walked in each morning. The gratitude in Patricia's voice when she talked about managing her own location. The tentative but growing relationship with Sarah. The way Emma looked at him, seeing not what he had been or what he had lost, but who he was becoming. This was success. This was victory.
Not dominion over others, but connection with them. Not building monuments to his own ego, but creating spaces where people could be fully human. Not accumulating more, but being more. Being present, being kind, being real. Marcus Hale had lost everything. And in that loss, in that complete destruction of everything he thought defined him, he had found something infinitely more valuable. He had found a way to live that was actually worth living. He had found work that mattered. Being present, being kind, being real. Marcus Hale had lost everything. And in that loss, in that complete destruction of everything he thought defined him, he had found something infinitely more valuable. He had found a way to live that was actually worth living. He had found work that mattered. He had found love and friendship and purpose. He had found a reason to wake up each morning that had nothing to do with winning and everything to do with being. Simply being. Fully, authentically, courageously, being the best version of himself he could manage. The diner door opened again. Sarah walked in, Maya beside her. They had become regulars, coming in twice a week for dinner. Sarah waved at Marcus, then went to greet Emma. Marcus watched them talk and laugh, watched the worlds he had built connect and intertwine. This was family. Not the cold, transactional relationships of his past, but genuine connection based on mutual respect and affection. As the evening wore on, Marcus helped Danny in the kitchen, washing dishes and prepping for the next day. His hands in dishwater, his back aching pleasantly from the work. Surrounded by the sounds of community and connection, Marcus Hale felt something he had never felt in any boardroom or corner office. He felt complete. He felt home. He felt, finally and fully, like himself. The rain started again as they closed up, a gentle spring rain that washed the streets clean. Marcus and Emma stood in the doorway, watching it fall, neither of them in any hurry to leave. "You know what the best part is," Emma said. "We're just getting started. Think about all the neighborhoods we haven't reached yet, all the people we haven't met, all the communities we haven't served. The future is wide open." Marcus smiled, taking her hand. "Then let's build it together, one cup of coffee at a time." They locked the door and walked out into the rain, not running from it, but moving through it with purpose and joy. Marcus Hale had been reborn in a rainstorm. It seemed fitting that rain would mark each milestone of his transformation. From the man who had everything, but nothing that mattered, to the man who had lost everything, but gained a life worth living. From the billionaire who was utterly alone, to the man who was surrounded by genuine connection and community. The rain fell. The city moved around them. And Marcus Hale walked home not to a penthouse that echoed with emptiness, but to a life filled with purpose and meaning and love. He had found his second chance, and he would spend every day proving himself worthy of it.